Welcome to chapter 15. This chapter we're going to talk all about weeds. So just a little bit of an outline. We're going to describe weeds. We're going to show some effects on agriculture and effects on soil. We'll look at human health issues, some unique traits of some weeds, whether it's noxious or invasive. We'll look at how reducing the risk of those losses due to weeds is very important in terms of production. So some key concepts, what we need to know. Weeds definitely reduce yield and profitability. Why? Because weeds are taking the nutrients, the minerals, the sun, the water, and they're competing with the crops that are already in the field. So how do we control them? We use mechanical means, so we do different farming practices, biological approaches, and then herbicides as well. So an herbicide is a chemical that will kill the plant, and some herbicides need to be sprayed at different parts of the growing season. So we'll dig into that a little bit, and we'll talk about some tillage as a traditional approach as well. So here are just some fast facts about weeds. They do cause an economic loss if we have a field of 100 acres that has corn in it and it's just invaded with weeds, and then another field that has another 100 acres of corn in it that has no weeds. That field that will have no weeds in it will have a significantly higher yield, which will then make more money in your pocketbook. So that's really important. Some weeds also are very harmful and can actually kill humans and livestock. So we'll talk about those. They're also very detrimental to ecosystems within the wildlife. So, not all weeds belong everywhere. So we'll talk about how those ecosystems can become overran with noxious and invasive weeds. So we classify weeds by four major aspects. So we'll look at the invasiveness of it. Is it very invasive? Is it not very invasive? The environment which it'll grow in. What does it grow in? Aerobic relationship. Does it have an aerobic relationship? Does it grow in water? Does it grow in hot weather? We'll look at the life cycle. So like biannual, annual, and then we'll look at taxonomy as well. So we describe weeds in these five major categories: noxious weeds, invasive weeds, terrestrial and aquatic weeds, life cycle, and grass and broadleaf leaves. And some of these might be similar to others, so make sure that you kind of understand and know the difference between these five. So now let's look at noxious weeds. So in 1974, there was an act that was that came into law, and it was called the Federal Noxious Weed Act, and that just defines these weeds as any living stage, whether that's in the reproductive part or the seed part, and having to do with the parasitic part of that plant that is foreign to where it is right at that moment. So if it's in a field, it's obviously foreign to where it is. So this can do a lot of damage to a lot of different types of agriculture, whether it's crops, livestock. You can try and figure out some management issues with it. So once you identify that noxious weed, the whole purpose would be to identify it and try to eradicate that noxious weed so that it doesn't hurt or kill livestock and humans. Now let's look at invasive plants. So these are plants that have been established in a natural part of an area and will start to replace a native grass or a native vegetation. So we see this more common in pasture. So if we have a native pasture, we can start to, if it's not taken care of correctly, we can start to see some invasive plants come in and start to replace or displace that native vegetation, which is not good because it's going to be very hard to bring that back to a native pasture, and then it will start stealing sunlight, minerals, water, all of the good stuff that native pasture needs to have to maintain itself. And so these native plants reproduce extremely quickly, and they spread very, very quickly. And so within a couple of years, if invasive species aren't taken care of, it can be very hard to get them eradicated within a pasture or a field. So garlic mustard's a great example. We see garlic mustard around here a lot. Cheatgrass, purple loosestrife, kudzu. We'll talk about that in just a second. those are all really good examples of invasive plants, and those plants take different types of management and herbicide to eradicate. So Kudzu, this is an invasive plant, and it will grow on anything really. And it'll grow on trees. It will start to hurt the trees as far as photosynthesis is concerned. Then really start just invading everything. And you can see from this picture that it can be very destructive to forest lands, and this is in the southeastern part of the United States, and obviously likes the heat, but then also likes a water type setting as well. Terrestrial and aquatic weeds, these obviously live on land, but though the terrestrial leaves will live on land, but aquatic leaves will then live in the water, can destroy a lot of really good ecosystems, wetland ecosystems, and if you like going to the lake, these type of weeds will then start to be very invasive in terms of recreational use. And also, here's some examples of that: loosestrife, the Australian water milfoil, the foil. Those are all some really good examples of terrestrial and aquatic weeds. We see these more so in Grand Lake than around here. So some life cycles of the weeds. We have just like we usually see in any type of plant, we have annual, biannual, and perennial. So we classify them as for their life cycle so that we can manage them correctly, and that's really important in terms of control.